constraints.
Yeah, absolutely. So we should probably maybe give folks like a 30,000 foot overview of Our Missing Hearts for the few who perhaps haven't read it yet.
Okay, so Our Missing Hearts, it's fundamentally about the story of a 12-year-old boy named Bird. And he has grown up without his mother. His mother left the family some years ago, and he doesn't know a lot about her. He doesn't know why she left the family. All he knows is that she was a poet and that her work was somehow seen as political, and he thinks maybe that's why she left. But he's been growing up in Cambridge with his father, who shelves books at the library. And when the book starts, Bird has just received a letter from his long lost mother, who he hasn't heard from in 3 years. And it's not even really a letter, it's a drawing that's just a whole page filled with tiny little pictures of cats. And he has no idea what this means, but it kind of rings a faint bell for him. He starts to remember a story that his mother told him when he was much, much younger, and it's something to do with painting cats or something. And so this starts him down a journey to try and find her. He tries to remember the story. He tries to find out about what it is she might be trying to tell him. And eventually he goes on this quest to find her. And the world that he lives in, the book has been described as a dystopia. And you can talk more later about how accurate we think it is to call it a dystopia. But it's very much like ours, with one exception. There are some laws that have been put in place called PACT, and it stands for Protecting American Culture and Traditions. And essentially what it says is it criminalizes people who are doing or espousing un-American views. And you can imagine pretty readily how that might be misused or how it might be turned against certain groups of the population. And so Bird starts to understand a little bit more about how this world might be dangerous for him. And in the process of looking for his mother, he starts to understand a little bit more about why she left and maybe sort of what they might be able to change the world into.
Yeah, that's an absolutely beautiful description. One of the things that I find so moving about this novel and that has really stayed with me, since I first read it, two years ago. Maybe?
Yeah, I mean, before it was actually done, it was sort of done.
Yeah, it's the fact that even though this is a novel that has in which the world building feels as richly sort of textured as Hilary Mantel. It's a book about this really sort of universal experience, I think, which is like, who the hell are our parents, and sort of just being befuddled by the mystery of them, even though it's unfolding within these really kind of extreme and trying circumstances that these characters are facing.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons that I wanted to tell the story from the point of view of this young boy Bird. He's 12 and the novel opens. Because I realized that what was happening to him was essentially what happens to most of us when we think of coming of age, right? If we're lucky, if you've had sort of a stable and secure childhood, your world is pretty small when you're young, right? And your family is most of what you think of as normal, right? That's just how things are. And it's only when you start to get a little bit older that you start to realize, actually, all families aren't just like mine. People do things differently and people think differently. And you start to realize that there are more places in the world that you have no idea about. And you start to realize that there are lots of people out there who might be very different from you. And you also start to realize that your parents have this whole other side to them, right? That maybe they're not just your parents. Maybe they had a life before you came, and maybe they still have a life while you're, they're not just taking care of you. They have interests that don't have to do with you, right? There's this sense that, if you're a kid, you maybe were looking at, a little picture and you thought that was the whole world. And you realize that actually there's all this other stuff outside of that frame. And that's very much sort of what happens to Bird. He starts off with his world being very small, and he literally sort of goes out on a journey. But that idea, I think, of kind of gradually opening up to bigger ideas. It felt like the reader would be able to go on a journey with him, that kind of journey of opening your eyes to understand the bigger context of the world.
Yeah, and the world in which Bird finds himself is, is terrifying in many ways, and